Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the debut record from Pridelands, Light Bands, out January 14th on Sharp Tone Records. The album has 11 tracks, 47 minutes in length, and they are an Australian metalcore band. As far as the overall design goes, I felt at first glance that this album was simple. There was really not much for me to get into, but the more I listened to the album, the more I realized that this album really has some interesting mechanisms in order to bring songs that are very different together and give them this continuous motion, so that this record on one hand is volatile, but on the other hand it feels very balanced and cohesive. Having songs bleed from one into the next allows a record to be that way, allows the record to have that sense of continuity. You as the listener, you're going from one place of mind as far as what you feel towards a song, and as the song starts to morph musically and structurally, you start to morph with it. So it's a lot easier for you to adjust to the changes as the songs progress, as the overall experience progresses, and the next thing you know, you're completely immersed with it, and the whole album feels a lot more together than perhaps what it really is. Once you go into the sound, that diversity is definitely there. You're going to see a lot of different changes happening from track to track. Every song has its own fingerprint, every song has its own design, but they stayed within the confines of the genre. They didn't go outside of the genre, they just perhaps expanded the walls of the genre in order to have more to play with. This is definitely a record that showcases everything that they have at their disposal, and they're not afraid of using it. One of the things I liked about the sound was the fact that you didn't have a uniform approach for every single song, and normally that's something you see on debut records. This album offers a lot more than just that. The boxes are different. Sometimes the components inside the box are the same, but the boxes themselves are very different from track to track. So it's easy for you to pinpoint what song is which after just going once through this record. It has really a very defined way of coming across in the sound, in the structure, and in the overall design. The other element of the soundscape that I thought that was really interesting was the electronic elements that add a little bit of depth to the experience. They have a positive impact in the atmosphere, they have a positive impact in the mood, and they help enhance the lyrical content of the songs themselves. And when you bring all of that together with everything else that is happening, these tracks really feel rich from a sound perspective. They don't feel bare bones, they don't feel linear, they don't feel flat. They feel like they have a heartbeat. They morph, they grow, they peak, they valley. They have a lot of movement within them, and you see that movement existing within the tracks and from track to track. So the soundscape on this album is really well put together, and it definitely becomes one of the strengths of the overall record. A strength that allows the album to live off of the quality of all the parts and not just live off of the quality of one single element. Even though I gotta say the guitars on this record are outstanding, but they're not the driver, they're not the motor, they're not the pillar of the album. Like I said earlier, this record lives off of everything, not just one single element. But having said that, I really enjoy the guitar sound throughout this entire album. I always felt like they created this invisible rope that tied in all of these different songs together, allow the tracks to have their uniqueness, but at the same time stay connected and give strength to the collective, not just worrying about the strength of the individual songs themselves. Now, the vocals were really fun. I like the approach, I like the wide range. The clean vocals are super impressive, very melancholic, really taking you down a very dark path and allowing you at the same time to be very comfortable in that path that you're taking. The screaming vocals come across in a way that feels like more of an outburst of everything that's been building up on the inside. So they create ebbs and flows within them. So the ebbs and flows of this record are not just existing within the soundscape, existing within the structures, but also existing within the vocal approach. Also, having some layers to the vocals was really cool. I really like to see those clean vocals on top with the harsh vocals behind. It makes the songs feel bigger. It not necessarily makes them feel heavier, but it gives them a sense of being more robust, having a much bigger impact and a much bigger reach. All around, for a debut album, this is an impressive release. I was expecting the album to feel a little bit safer, and this record really feels like, in my opinion, is pushing some boundaries. And when you create an album as a debut album that pushes boundaries, that has a very intelligent way of connecting very different songs, having this sense of continuity, having this sense of growth and morphing from track to track and within tracks themselves, allowing the listener to also grow and morph as the album is growing and morphing, is a very interesting idea, very interesting approach, not something that I was expecting once again from a debut album. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Parallel Lines. Somber opening, both musically and vocally. The electronic elements, once again, compound the sound, give it a little bit more depth, allow the overall atmosphere to be a lot richer. The song becomes volatile at times. It has movement, and it moves really well, no patterns. And this is something that's true throughout the entire record. This is not an album designed around patterns. It's really a design around the individuality of the songs, and this one really has that in Aces. It comes across as you're moving from the shadows into the light, and then sometimes you're going from the light into the shadows. That melancholy and intensity exists or coexists in Parallel Lines. Next, you have Parted Time, a song that comes in waves. This really feels like a roller coaster ride, or you're in a very bumpy boat ride across rough seas, because you just feel the peaks and valleys. There's smooth transition. They're not abrupt as you move from one into the other, but they're incredibly high and incredibly low. There's just this movement that it's always existing as you progress down the line, as you move throughout this song. You see that movement happening both musically and vocally. The peaks exist on both ends of the spectrum, and I really felt like one enhanced the other. Where the sound went, the vocals went. Where the vocals went, the sound followed. That's a very interesting approach that makes this song super dynamic. Now, the clean vocals really allowed it for a more blended experience. When they came in, they smoothed things down. They felt soothing in the overall volatility that the track has. But I really like how this song moves. The movement that it has is undeniable from beginning all the way to the end. Last but not least, you have Translucent Blues, a very melancholic track from beginning all the way to the end, musically and lyrically. The lyrical content of this track definitely is well represented in the sound and in the vocal approach that they took from beginning to end with the song. Vocally, you see that infusion of emotion that is represented in the lyrics coming across to the vocals, and the vocals represent them very well to a T, I would say. You could really cut the emotions with a knife when you listen to this track. It becomes palpable, it becomes visible, the way the song is coming across, the sound, the emotions, the lyrics, the vocals, everything. It just feels like such a heavy, emotionally driven track. It's not a heavy track musically, but emotionally it weighs a ton, and you feel that impact from beginning all the way to the end. This is it, Pridelands with Light Bends, out January 14th on Sharp Tone Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.